Our topic is energy transition. So we have Petrobras, we have CEPEL, Green Energy Institute, and we have Pli Grow Group. That is this the way you say it? Pilot. Pygo. Pygo. Okay. So we have Ghana, Petrobras, Brazil, and remotely we will listen to Inuveri, that is the director of Itaipu International. He was supposed to be here, but he sent us a message, so we will listen to him. Hello, since the first term, President Lula is focusing Africa as a big partner of Brazil. We have much in common in our history and much in common, so together we can develop our countries. So this number of meetings have made a difference, exchanging information, analysis of opportunities, and see that together we can build more fair countries and a better planet. I'd like to congratulate you all, and João and Bosco, and participants, and I do apologize for not being able to be there in person due to my presence at COP30. But meetings like this make a difference in our country and our population. All the best to you all. Thank you to the president of Itaipu Binational, Brazil, Paraguay. COP30 is an event that are gathering so many people, but we are here talking about energy transition. But COP30, there will be many discussions like that around COP30. And we know this topic will continue to be discussed here on the news, and not only here in our Brazil Africa Forum, but also from next week or even today, there are being other meetings of mayors in Rio de Janeiro. So this I'd like to ask Maria Beatriz to start her talk because she has to travel back to Rio. So I'd like you to talk about this private and public connection. At what point are we in the discussion where Brazil has a natural leadership, because Brazil is a producer of energy, and for many years, when you think about Petrobras or Itaipu, we generate energy, renewable energy, for a long time. So what can you tell? First of all, thank you so much. That's the second year that I have the privilege of being here, so I'd like to thank Professor Bosco for the opportunity, and also a special thanks for Fontenelle. I was really paying attention to everything that has been said here, and I was wondering about the similarities that we have between Brazil and Africa. And when it comes to energy and biodiversity, I'd like you as the moderator to allow me to add something to this conversation, which is something that unites. We have South Atlantic as a, where we have so many opportunities. I was happy when I heard about blue economy. Brazil and Africa can develop from food security all the way up to energy. If we use the Atlantic Ocean as a heritage, as a common heritage to be shared in terms of research, minerals that we have. Many people are looking at our biodiversity, not only because of our biodiversity, but because of our lands. So if we think about the Atlantic Ocean in the south as a territory that will be really that will really stand out in its importance. So I'd like to suggest Professor Bosco to make Brazil-Africa Blue Forum to talk about Brazil and Africa coasts, because both coasts have the same concerns and challenges, and research is being done in the blue economy in Brazil are growing. We could share it with Africa, not forgetting that underneath the Atlantic, we can go to India and the Pacific, so we have a number of possibilities. OCDE considers that blue economy up to 2030 will be around $3 trillion, if not before that. So that's a huge potential for the energy sector. If we consider drilling, oil and gas, so I'm going beyond a trend that we have now that is very dangerous. That is having data centers underwater. There is the heating of oceans, so we can have a forum only about that. I'm saying that because I organize an event in Rio, and you are all invited to be there. It's going to take place between 27 and 29 of November, and blue economy is very important there. So I was so happy to be sitting down close to Vanessa, and she's so interested in blue economy as well. So sorry if I'm talking about blue economy right away, but another important partnership that we have is rainforest. The Amazon on Congo has a rainforest as well, wonderful one. This could be replicated in Congo and vice versa. So there's the possibility of creating a rainforest business school. All these are things that are being worked, and I'm just mentioning two of them. There can be many transformations when we have partnerships both in biodiversity partnerships as well as in South Atlantic, that we have to look at it with much care. In Brazil, we have the University of Amazon focused on scientific studies with what we have in our rainforest. But adding this, or together with this, we also have business school with all the need of preservation being done by the academia would be great. I'd like to pass the floor to Pais, so we can have Brazil and then Africa, then we come back to the two other Brazilian panelists. We could share a panel last year or the previous year, I don't remember. Anyway, I think we were together in one of the panels. Foi no ano passado. So it's interesting because when we have a panelist from the previous year, from previous years, they help us to understand the evolution or ways that we took from our conversations in this forum. Has anything happened in this connection between Brazil and Africa, you in Ghana or from Ghana, that you can say, well, we could really move forward last year or in the previous years, and you're still moving forward? Or are things still very, let's say, in the beginning?
Right, thank you very much. And I think before I start, I would like to say thank you to Prof. Monte. I think proud to yesterday around 4 p.m. I didn't know I was going to be here. Yeah. So I probably was a wild card. As in here sitting talking, I probably was a wild card by Prof. Monte. He was like, "Hey, wait, Pius is here. Call him. He has to speak." So forgive me if my responses might not be researched because I haven't had time to prepare. Yeah, but I like how you took the angle, looking at how far this whole collaboration has come regarding Brazil and Africa, how we are going to connect these two peoples for business. For last year, we discussed opportunities in the extractive industry to see how well we can partner and grow. Unfortunately, and I think I like the last comment passed by my other brother from Mali, who is heading the aircraft region. If you look at the partnership that has happened for those in India and China, and by the way, there is no cultural connection between Africa, India, and China. But unfortunately, these are the continents that are taking up a lot of space in Africa because there is a lot of opportunities that are there for the taking. But unfortunately for Brazil, Africa, the connection has always been a lot of talks. But I think we need to move forward beyond the talks. There is a lot of cultural connection between Brazil and Africa. One, the climate, the arable lands, the food production. It is there for the taking. But since last year now, we haven't gone ahead to take up space because it's waiting to be taken. What we need to do is, this platform we have, it's really good. And I always say Prof. Monte is like a bridge, okay, that will connect these two peoples. But the real engine of growth will be the peoples in there, the businesses in Brazil, the businesses in Africa, who are willing to partner because this is a platform for that partnership to grow. So unfortunately, not to disappoint you, since last year, yes, we had that conversation, but there hasn't been a real growth because the volume of business that is coming from Brazil to Africa, unfortunately, is going down. So we need to now look at how the public and private partnership between these two, if I say continents, can really be transformational to bring up the growth we are looking to bring up in the next few years. Thank you.
So this shall not be only an intention.
Exactly.
Certo? So, então,
Right, now I'm going to pass the floor to two Brazilian power in clean energy production. First, let's talk to Rodrigo Regis Galvão, that has been here at this forum before. And also, as I said before, if there's a way, if there was a way, or if we are still talking about some of those topics, in special the energy transition that could unite us more, even more, between Brazil and Africa. Okay, great. First of all, I'd like to say good afternoon to you all. Before being at Setel, I was working in Itaipu. I used to say a hug of the size of Itaipu for you all and the renewable power you have in Brazil. Thank you, João Bosco, for the opportunity of being here. When it comes to energy transition and cooperation, we have much in common in terms of food production, but also we have challenges in terms of food security, and we have much in common. Well, I worked for a long time with biogas, and much of what we did was focused on how we can transform some environmental liabilities that comes from production, either animal protein or agriforest program production and energy. And we have several partnerships and collaborations. And we have a very interesting partnership, especially with Mozambique. But I'd like to focus on a topic that is very interesting when it comes to energy transition. There's a book that I always remember that is Reinventing Fire. I don't know if you are aware of this book. And it talks that when you master fire is when you can develop societies the way we have them today. And it says how the society came to this point by using fossil fuel that is very used in industry, especially in Brazil. When it comes to the agricultural production in Brazil, we use a lot of fossil fuel. We have gone through a certification process, but we have this energy, water, and food. Those three things require integrated planning among them. And when we look at the agricultural production, we have to see that in Brazil, this process have gone through the industrialization and the demand of energy, either electric or fossil fuel based, and how we can supply this energy to provide food security and energy security. And we have a lot to collaborate in this area. Although we have so many challenges that we're facing in the electric sector with the penetration of renewable energy, both wind and solar power, Brazil is an example on how we have planned to come to this point with a very great renewable energy matrix. And thus we give security on the other end. So if we look at this process in Brazil, and I'd like to open a bracket here. If we, CEPEL, where I work today, created by Eletrobras, CEPEL played an important role in developing energy models to make this planning, electric planning in Brazil. Those mathematic models that we still use for our planning to get ready for the future can be a good collaboration too with Africa. We started some actions with Angola. Today, Brazil has a great advantage in the electricity sector in Brazil. We have our marketing. We could do things even better. We have a interconnected system that is a great example on how Brazilian engineering has developed. And this knowledge that we have here can be shared. And the systems that makes all this planning, models, mathematical models, and this has been developed within CEPEL. That is a Brazilian technology that we could create connection and collaborate with our experience with African countries. You mentioned Mozambique. Mozambique is a country that civil war in Brazil finished in 1992, and the energy line that would gather the south of the country where Maputo is and the rest of the country. There's a big hydroelectric power plant. They could not make a connection. They have to do it outside the country via Zimbabwe plus another country. So these are experiences. We here have a big continental country that has only been interconnected as a whole country recently because the Amazon was not part of the grid. So this is something that we have developed in Brazil that is not replicable in Africa because nothing is replicable by itself anywhere in the world. Not even in Recife, or you came to Rio Grande do Sul in the south of Brazil, nothing from the north of Brazil and from the south of Brazil, but that's an experience that we have developed in a way that can serve Brazil. All right, now Radamés is responsible, the general manager of renewable energy at Petrobras. And we Brazilians, we had the approval 2 weeks ago of before starting COP30 on oil exploitation. So first, some tests to drill in the Atlantic Ocean, in the north of the Atlantic Ocean. I'd like you to share about this experience. This is a difficulty to make energy transition by itself, going from a matrix to another matrix, energy matrix. But today, in addition to the transition of the power model, we still have to keep the energy going. And I think that you have to stand for one of the biggest energy companies in the world, and you have to make the transition to another mode of production. Everybody is convinced about that, but you have to have energy enough for the present and for the future. And I'd like to hear from you. Okay, thank you so much. First of all, thank you for the organizers of this event, Professor João, for your support. Well, and the folks that are here, I know that we are going ahead of the time we should be, so thank you for being here. That's a big challenge. We had the authorization recently to drill the first oil well. We call it Wildcat. So we'll choose the area. We have this. After so many rounds, we could show our ability to solve any problem that we could have. So we got the authorization to start drilling this oil well. So it shows how we in Petrobras see the future, and at the same time, it gives us an opportunity that we can have in the relationship between Brazil and Africa. I'd like to mention one aspect said in the previous panel about who has the willingness to partner with Africa, and not only opening possibility of sharing technology and know-how. We have a very interesting history in Africa. That was our going to Nigeria, one of our best assets. So 2 assets offshore, Akpo and Agbami, where we saw a partnership becoming reality into a business, not only in terms of information exchange or technical support, but a number of oil companies were willing to explore those areas, and we had a bigger offering of royalties to the Nigerian government. So the end of the story was very successful. We could produce oil of very high quality at huge volumes, way beyond of our initial perception, and from the African regulator all the way up to us with all the know-how, knowing the Brazilian coast that is divided by the Atlantic. We have parallels, similarities with the African coast, and through analogy we could do a better exploitation than any other oil company could do. So we are living a very interesting moment now. We are forecasting what is the representativeness of Petrobras in the primary energy matrix. So we deliver 1/3 of the primary energy to Brazil as Petrobras, either fuel, diesel, gasoline, SAF, or electrons. We have thermal plants, and we are having some other initiatives. So when it comes to what Brazil will be in terms of the energy demand in 2030, 2040, 2050, we see that in order to keep this relevance of 30% or 1/3 of the energy produced, we cannot be standing still in the fossil modes, but we cannot abandon it completely. So when we look at the future, we open windows of opportunities that go through, continue exploring the whole fossil potential in natural gas or oil, but at the same time opening opportunities in renewable segments and we have institutions that have been doing this for decades in an excellent way. We have Axi now, and among other private companies in Brazil, going through a very important partnership with our agribusiness. So one of the windows that we're going to open, what Petrobras, why is Petrobras here talking about agriculture? Is because we've been reflecting the past year, and we are entering some areas that are close to agriculture. So several of them have parameters here. So the first one is by producing soybeans and corn, we can produce fuel from this, and we have seen this growing. So we can expand the agriculture. In addition to that, we have the possibility of, as Rodrigo said, some of the industry waste can create biomethane, which is the same one carbon molecule of hydrogen, and you can use it as a fuel. So roughly saying, the positioning we're seeing for Petrobras is one called fair energy transition. So we look at the future, we are trying to grow, we're trying not to create inflation in energy, to make all the other initiatives feasible that rely on energy, that are all, in summary, and to make this institution to continue being relevant. And I think we have many bridges to build with Africa in this sense. Okay, great. Would you like to say something?
So I was listening quite intensely to what he was saying regarding the translation, and I think it is quite important for us to converge this idea into agri-food systems, because what is the point in the drilling of oil, making all the money for? It's to be able to afford food. So if we don't find a way to converge these ideas, where he's talking about renewable energy for Petrobras, who is originally based in fossil fuels, but now we are transitioning to renewable energy, which is a good idea. But how do we converge this with the African continent, where agriculture is predominantly fed by rains, is rain-fed agriculture, where it is left to the natural weather? Now we know, because of climate change, what Dr. Da Silva actually presented, one of the biggest challenges to food security is climate change. Climate change is real, it is happening. So those days in Africa, the month for rainfall usually is from May, June, and July. So most of the smallholder farmers will plan their farm activities around that time, because that's where the rains come. But fast forward about 20 years down the line, now the climate pattern has changed. So food production has been affected very hardly in Africa. That is why there is still hunger in certain pockets of African countries, because most of these farmers don't know anything about solar-powered irrigation system, because they can't afford. Now, this is where Brazil, with all the experience and expertise in renewable energy, have gained access. So with this access, if you're able to partner well, where there's public and private partnership between the government and the institutions, in the private institutions in Brazil, like Petrobras, Africa has almost 365 days of sunshine. So if you're able to invest in solar, you can get the benefits you're looking for. Whilst getting the benefits, you're also helping these smallholder farms to be able to control water supply, such that their farming is not only connected to when rains come, but they can have access to water their produce all year through. When that happens, I can assure you, within a couple of years, this issue of hunger in Africa, where there is food insecurity, can be curtailed. So this is where I think we, as the businesses in Brazil and Africa, can come together with the government to bring up a policy that can really make inroads into food production in Africa. And I think when that happens, in the next 3 years, 4 years, we'll probably be having a different conversation, not on food insecurity, but maybe something else. And I believe that's what we have to probably consider looking at in the next couple of years. Thank you.
A senhora tem alguma coisa?
Do you have anything to add about this need of connection of forces. Everybody needs to eat, right? But the connection between the need, the public, the private, and third sector, how is this connection? How can this be done? Not quicker, but on an ongoing way. I paid much attention to what you said, and I think the moderator is doing a great job here. Well, you mentioned energy, water, soil, you mentioned the agribusiness, and then you mentioned the way we put it all together, bringing all those initiatives to Africa. And I'd like to step back in what the minister said before about the waste and how you can optimize waste by generating energy from waste or residues of the agriculture. How can you transform waste and all those initiatives together with Africa? When he said about school meal and sovereignty, all this is connected. I don't know if you're aware of that, but Brazil has 40 million, serves 40 million of school meals every day. It's like the whole country of Spain in the public school system. Imagine the size, the impact this has, feeding a country like Spain every day. If we think about food security, food sovereignty, if you use only this everyday population of Spain, considering all the variables around that, until you get to energy, until you get to waste, this would be just great. So you asked, well, I don't think if I answered your question, but anyway, I'm just trying to think about everything you said, adding an example that the minister gave about public purchases for school meals. This is a game changer. I like those comparisons that you made with Spain. We can also say that it's not only a Spain, but it can be also South Korea or a whole Argentina, similar populations that help us to understand the size of it in terms of people affected that are, in our case here in Brazil, young people. Waste. This is something that energy producers as well as food producers are very concerned about. Is there a way to put together those two kinds of waste to transform it into something positive tomorrow? Let me step back. There's a point that is very important for me when it comes to energy transition, food security, and we have like water, energy, and food. We have to have a more inline planning to have more resilient economies, since once I can work a balance between those three axes in a more organized way. So the energy production sector, either fossil or hydroelectric plants and things, require water. When it comes to food production, that requires water and energy. And when it comes to water, I don't know if people are aware of that, but the process of treating and distributing water consumes huge amount of energy. The biggest energy bills of the states are of the sanitation companies that belongs to the states. Let me tell you a story. It's an important story. When I was born in the northeast of Brazil, and I didn't know the agricultural production in an intensive way as when I moved to the south to work on Itaipu and Foz do Iguaçu. And we were talking about biogas because the reservoir of Itaipu water power plant, we have a very big animal protein production, the size of Belgium, right? The Lake of Itaipu, just to give you an idea. So we have a very big production of pigs by square kilometer, and the biggest production of birds. And that process of pollution of the lake would diminish the lifetime of Itaipu power plant. And I remember we were discussing biofuel. And I said, we need to have a public policy to encourage the production of biogas in Brazil. And a friend of mine, Secretary of Planning, former president of Itaipu and Eletrobras, said, we need to increase 7,000 gigawatts, and we're talking about a production of way less than that. Once I was in a meeting in Brasilia discussing subsidies, and I said, we are talking about electric issues without that involves agriculture, and we didn't call any representative from the agricultural sector. So we decided to talk to the Ministry of Agriculture to talk about the importance of the circular economy on agricultural production, taking advantage of waste to produce biogas for biomethane or biogas, and then things started to work. And it worked so well that in the next term, the Minister Bezerra Coelho made us implement the national program of biogas. Now I have a joke for Brazilians only. There's a guy from Pernambuco, Northeast Brazil, and a guy from the South Brazil. And because there is some kind of fight between the Northeast and the South Brazil, that's why he's making this joke. So I'm telling you this story because it shows the importance of creating connections between different sectors that should talk among themselves. And waste, when it comes to energy transition, we are very concerned that we have to create renewable energy, but that's not the only thing. When it comes to energy transition, we are facing a very big problem in Brazil. We have much intermittent energy transition, but we don't have infrastructure to distribute it all. So we have problems during peak hours, which creates problems in our hydroelectric companies. And we have another challenge that is added to this one. So when it comes to energy transition, we have to have planning, and energy transition has to be done in a fair way. We have to look at the opportunities and do this in a fair way with quality in order to not to affect the prices of fuel and energy. But I think the biggest challenge that I want to mention is our need of integrating all this planning and coordination rather than each actors of this to work on themselves. It seems that in this energy transition that the whole world was convinced about this need. From studies that have been done, then from the states so this energy could reach the private sector quicker. But it seemed that we came to the conclusion that we needed to make this transition. Then the president of the USA, who doesn't believe that, and the president of Paraguay as well, is not going to COP30. You know, he's our neighbor on the other side of Itaipu, energy production. How can we... Do we always have to come back to the basics, trying to convince people that oil will not last forever, that we need renewable energy, and we have to try to convince the private initiative and the government? Explain that to me. It would be great if there was only Trump who doesn't believe that. Even my board, I even need to explain things like that to my board. And it's not a simple task to do. And at the same time, it's necessary. What we see, it's the way human nature evolves. We need to plan food security, energy availability, either to make this transition to a greener model or to reduce costs or to have it at a safer way require time. When I make a decision of drilling a well in the northern Brazilian coast, I am thinking about 2050. I'm thinking about the price of oil in 2040, 2050, and the need of people to get some oil at that time. So what we have seen is, if we consider what happened in terms of energy in the past 200 years, we see that energy models or energy sources have summed up. You mentioned Rio Grande do Sul state in the south of Brazil. We, as human beings, always increase the consumption of the first source of energy, which is coal. So what we see is the reduction of the relevance of a bigger matrix, because no one steps back in terms of comfort as human beings. So our first step is to think there's no way to continue growing and giving up solutions that will cause less impact in the economy and people's lives, because the climate transformation will happen. We thought about the way that the oceans will get warmer, was to happen in the future. But this is the first year where two big hurricanes in the Caribbean happen, So when we think about solutions for food and all other systems, another point that I'd like to make is that we have two different moments. Brazil is a power in terms of agriculture. We don't say much about something so important that we have in a country, that is Embrapa. We have a technological production in terms of agriculture, seeds, planting techniques, that is admired by Europeans. So Embrapa was built by Japanese, Brazilians, and others, with the government who looked at it as a long-term public policy, and we have amazing things happening at Embrapa, production curves that are huge, and this allowed us to keep deforestation away, which is our main problem when it comes to carbon emissions. With this initiative, we still have room to develop in Africa. Africa doesn't have the level of productivity in terms of production by acre, similar to what we have in Brazil, and this can be done. There are serious companies led by Africans who could take advantage on this kind of solution. And then we can say, let's make this into a business, not only providing technology, but going to Africa, providing technology and making money together with that, because Brazil and Africa and the whole world will rely on that. So that's a connection between the two topics that I think is a great opportunity that we can have and better explore that. Going to Africa is always very good. I can tell. I can tell. I highly recommend you to go there. Professor João Bosco, are we done for today? No? So we're done for today, right? Tomorrow we have more. Professor, thank you so much for the opportunity of being here again. And thank you for the all panelists. I'd like to say on behalf of all the ones that have been here before, thank you so much for those, the panelists and those here with us, and to Institute Brazil Africa. Thank you.